Hello everyone, I am Justa Maureen Choson, and now let's discuss about taxation in Spanish Philippines. Despite the Philippines' natural abundance prior to Spanish colonization, our ancestors operated largely within a subsistence economy. Therefore, the tribute, taxes, buwis, handog, or labor services rendered to datos in some early Filipino communities while appearing similar to taxation were essentially distinct from its modern definition. Now, here are the objectives. When the Spanish arrived, they changed the way Filipinos lived by forcing them to pay tributos or tributes, a system of taxation they used in all American colonies. This shifted the economy away from simply providing for one's own needs to one where Filipinos had to produce goods or money to give to the Spanish colonizers. The purpose is to generate resources to finance the maintenance of the islands, such as salaries of government officials and expenses of the clergy. The difficulty faced by the Spaniards in revenue collection through the tribute was the dispersed nature of the settlements, which they solved by introducing the system of reduction. Reduction, creating pueblos where Filipinos were gathered and awarded plots of land to till, and encomenderos, who receive awards from the Spanish crown for their services. Exempted from payment of tributos were the principales, alcaldes, gobernadores, cabeza de barangay, soldiers, members of the civil guard, government officials, and vicrets. Before the Spanish Filipinos mainly farmed to feed themselves, but with Spanish demands for payments, they were forced to grow much more, leading to the need for more advanced and demanding farming methods. This changed agriculture from focus on survival to one driven by colonial obligation. Later on, half of the tribute was paid in cash and the rest with produce. This financed the conquest of the Philippines. Toward the end of the 16th century, the Manila-Acapulco trade was established through the galleons, a way by which the Spaniards could make sure that European presence would be sustained. Once a year, the galleon will be loaded up with merchandise from Asia and sent to New Spain, Mexico, and back. This improved the economy of the Philippines and reinforced the control of the Spaniards all over the country. Tax collection was still very poor, and subsidy from Spain will be needed through the situado real delivered from the Mexican treasury to the Philippines through the Gulf. This subsidy stopped as Mexico became independent in 1820. And now, in 1884, as the Spanish colonial government stopped collecting the tribute, or general tax, and replace it with a poll tax. This tax was a fixed amount that every adult had to pay and was documented through a certificate of identification called the Cedula Personal. This is required from every resident and must be carried while traveling. Unlike the tribute, the payment of cedulas is by person and by family. Payment of the cedula is progressive, and according to income categories, this system, however, was a heavy burden for the peasants and was easy for the wealthy. But because of this, revenue collection greatly increased and became the main source of government income. The Chinese in the Philippines were also made to pay their a discriminatory cedula which is bigger than the Filipinos pay. And now there are two direct taxes were added in 1878 and imposed on urban income. We have urbana, A tax on the annual rental value of an urban real estate. Next one is industria, a tax on salaries, dividends, and profits. Indirect taxes, such as customs duties, were imposed on exports and imports to further raise revenue. There were no excise taxes collected by the Spaniards throughout the years of colonialism. The colonial government also gained income from monopolies, such as the sale of stamp paper, manufacture and sale of liquor, cockpits, and opium. The biggest of the state monopolies was tobacco, which began in 1781 and halted in 1882. This monopoly made it possible for the colony to create a surplus of income that made it self-sufficient without need for the situado real and even contributes to the treasury of Spain. Forced labor was a character of Spanish colonial taxation in the Philippines and was required from the Filipinos. The polo system, male Filipinos were obliged to serve and burden that resulted in an increased death rate and flight to the mountains, which led to decrease in population in the 17th century. Polos and servicios became lighter and organized at the municipal level. Males were required to provide labor for 40 days a year, reduced to 15 days a year in 1884. Now the definition of falas. Falas refers to the computation fee that male Filipinos could pay instead of fulfilling their mandatory labor service, or polo, paying the falas of 3 pesos per annum, which was usually lost to corruption because it was collected at the municipal level. Next one is kaidas or droppings. Refers to the portion of the falas computation fee that was lost due to corruption at the municipal level. The polos will be called Prestación Personal or personal services by the second half of the 19th century. The principales, who, are, who were given positions such as cabezas de barangay or alcaldes in the local government, were able to enrich themselves by pocketing tributos and or falas, while the peasants were left to be abused. Now here is a primary source from Mariano Herbosa writes to Rizal about taxes. Now I have summarized the letter that Mariano wrote. Mariano notes that taxes are a significant cause of misery in the area, with many types of taxes imposed on different land and crops. We have the irrigated rice land tax at 50 cabanas of unhusked rice, regardless of the water availability. Next one is dry land. Tax rates vary based on the crop planted with taxes, increasing if the harvest is good but not decreasing if it's poor. We have residential lots. Taxes on residential properties are arbitrary with no fixed rules, leading to inconsistent charges based on whims. A small lot can incur a tax of 50 pesos if a stone wall is added, while a larger nipa or kogon house pays only 1 peso for a specific size. The contract for property tax payment is fixed for 4 years, but allows for tax increases every year. Receipts for tax payments are often unclear and do not specify amounts paid, leading to confusion and distrust among residents. Taxes on crops such as rice and maize are also variable and subject to arbitrary determination. The local economy is suffering from locust infestation that are damaging crops, and despite government efforts to pay for locust catchers, residents feel inadequately compensated. Now that's the end of my report. Thank you for listening.